Welcome to our third webinar for here today. Today we are going to be talking about cocktails and our cocktail program and what makes us unique, kind of in that sense. But the modern craft cocktail movement, it kind of takes its start in the 80s with Dale DeGroff working at the Rainbow Room in New York City. He did a really kind of like intense bar program, and he said, I want to use fresh juice in it. And he ended up writing a few cocktail books that are generally regarded as the the handbook or the original textbook for if you wanted to make cocktails. And actually they still really don't have that like dated feel that like some of the early craft beer books do. They're still quite relevant. Most of the craft cocktail movement, the modern side of it happened, towards the late 90s. You saw Angel Share in the East Village open up, which is a Japanese speakeasy in the East Village. Through the early aughts, you saw bars like Milk and Honey, Husky's bar. Into kind of like the mid aughts, you saw bars like PDT, and a couple of years later Death and Co. open. There was an explosion going on in San Francisco at the same time. Bourbon and Branch was opening. The Chicago scene was exploding. The Violet Hour was crushing it, and all of these places are still kind of like really well-known places, and that is because they all built on kind of the basics of what a good craft cocktail is, which is about intent. It's about intention, kind of like what journey you want to take the drinker on. It's about kind of like basic building blocks, the way that really good beer is about basic building blocks. The most brewers that are out there who are making like really, really, really well-regarded beer, it's usually rooted in history, and it's not like this crazy, intensely modernized thing. Or if it is, it's like a modern spin on something that still nails kind of like all of these regimented building blocks. So my kind of like entry into the craft cocktail movement and the craft beer movement came when we opened Amore Amargo in the East Village, 11 bitters. It's on 6th and A. It at the time had, I think we had 5 bar seats and then 4 kind of like rail seats. All the drinks were stirred, and it was all focused on bitterness. There was a different bartender every night of the week, and we all kind of like had our own following. And Amore kind of like encapsulates a lot of the really cool things about the craft cocktail movement, because it's a really, really, really esoteric place. Everything on the back bar looks very unfamiliar to you. And if it was the 90s, people would have walked in and said, I don't know what any of this is. Get me out of here. Let's go drink a Cosmo. And even in like the early 2000s, if people had walked in there, they might just be intimidated. But sort of with the rise of the Food Network and Bon Appetit and, this kind of like interest in again, flavor, people were coming in, and instead of being intimidated, they were saying like, hey, this is the party we want to be a part of. What's that bottle? What's that bottle? And we developed regulars who, like, every time they came in, they were testing us, testing themselves, and saying like, hey, let me taste that esoteric Amaro up there from the Czech Republic. And then we'd taste it. And then the next time they'd say, hey, what can you make with it? What are we going to do this week? And so it was very like bartender's choice centric and very bar centric. On the right of your screen there is the Sharpie Mustache, which is a cocktail that I created during my days at Amore Amargo, which has been written about in the New Yorker and New York Magazine, the New York Times. It's in the New York Guide to Cocktails that Amanda Schuster put out a few years ago. It's been written about in Amaro, Brad Thomas Parsons' book on the subject of these bitter liqueurs, and it's kind of like the house drink that Amore Amargo is known for. You can also, interestingly, get it at No Anchor if you've never had one before, but a really, really unique drink, and kind of a fun one because it's served in a flask. So after opening Amore Amargo, and spending this time in New York, where I was working at other bars too. I worked at Gin Palace. I worked at a rum bar called El Cobre. Gin Palace was one of the first bars in New York City to do draft cocktails. In fact, we had to um, kind of like famously in the lore of New York, the New York craft cocktail scene, we had to argue before a kind of a hearing panel that draft cocktails were legal. So they had come in and shut us down and said like, hey, you can't do this because the law said X, Y, and Z. And we had to come in and argue that yes, we can. And the law basically at the time was based on margarita machines. So it said that, hey, a draft cocktail, like you can dispense a pre-mixed cocktail, but it has to be in motion of some sort. Then at first we tried arguing that there's a natural like molecular Brownian motion to everything. And that wasn't good enough for them. And so after that, we were like, well, what if we put a magnetic stirrer in the bottom of it that keeps it moving? And they were like, yeah, that's fine. Anyways. Then I moved back to Richmond, Virginia, and helped some very dear friends open a beer and craft cocktail bar called Saison, which is very, very kindly viewed in Richmond, which is a really kind of like craft beer mecca at this point, thanks to breweries like The Vale and Triple Crossing and the Answer Brew Pub. But Saison has won both best craft cocktail bar in Richmond, and it's also won best beer bar in Richmond in their annual bar awards. This was kind of my first time completely running a show, and it was also running a show in a kind of undeveloped cocktail city. So it was really kind of like all about, once again, like building on those building blocks, those basics, trying to not really like flex too hard, more like letting people know that they were a part of the party. That this was their party, and like not trying to like intimidate anyone. We didn't want it to feel like a speakeasy. We wanted for, these people who are in this kind of like established beer market to see that, cocktails are something that they could wrap their head around. But it was a pretty stringent program. And this is kind of like something that I've learned about myself, is that when I get in a creative zone, I have no issue writing cocktail menu after cocktail menu. And so our menus there were, we had about 27 drinks on it, and we would flip the menu 4 times a year. So we were creating like 100 cocktails a year, and they were all kind of like vetted and tinkered with and made to spec. After I left, they kind of raised the white flag and shrunk the menu down, rightly so. I mean, it's like that was a big program to undertake, but that kind of like helped establish them as this really special place to drink. There were no draft cocktails there because it's not legal in that part of the city, but we did start doing kind of like bottled carbonated mixers that were poured tableside, which was super fun, including a drink that was on the No Anchor menu called the hopped gin and tonic, where we were using, instead of just cinchona bark as the bittering agent for tonic, we were using single hop varietals as well, and kind of creating this really textured, beautiful bittered tonic, which maybe we'll have to bring back at some point at No Anchor, because it's a really tasty drink. And normally homemade tonic is something I wouldn't wish on most of my worst enemies, because it's just, a lot of them miss the mark, but this one is a really like compelling textured thing. Then I moved to Seattle, and I spent my first year at Cannon up on Capitol Hill. An award-winning bar, the largest spirit selection in the Western Hemisphere, pretty large menu, a pretty like process intense menu. I worked the personality well. So there were kind of like in a lot of bars, if you have 2 wells, that those are the stations where you're making drinks. You would have one that's like the service well, where your job is to pump out the drinks for everyone. And then you have one person who's in what they call the personality well, which is you're kind of like running the bar top itself and interacting with guests and making them feel welcome, and making all of their drinks. So if you can't tell, I am a lifelong inhabitant of the personality well. I've worked service wells where I have to, but I really, kind of like thrive in the atmosphere where I'm face to face with guests. And I'm really excited about being back in the well when we get here today, going and kind of like being a face that people walk in and see and recognize. And think that'll be really fun. So I worked at Canon for 1 year, and then I worked at Rob Roy for a year, which Canon and Rob Roy, before I moved to Seattle, like those are two of the three bars that everyone knows from Seattle, or everyone knew at the time, Zigzag being the third. But Canon, Rob Roy, and Zigzag were kind of the three lauded award-winning temples. In fact, when I first stepped into these places, like I can remember the way that they smelled, the way that the sound of the bar of people shaking and stirring like sounded. They're just like really, really, really special places and really intentional places, and just like a huge honor for me in my career to be able to work at both of them. Rob Roy, significantly different program. Canon's more about kind of like the bells and the whistles and the serving things in unique vessels. Rob Roy is old school. It's just, it's a 1950s, feels like a bachelor pad or something like that, with the portrait of Joe DiMaggio up there. If there's a non gendered version of a bachelor pad, I guess. But Anu has just done really wonderful things there. I got to work with some of the best bartenders I've ever worked with in my life there. And really kind of like a disparate, we would get the cocktail junkies in who wanted to like play stump the bartender and wanted us to hand carve their ice and all of those things, which I love. But then we'd also get, groups of, 20 people in who were just out on the town, bachelorette parties, bachelor parties, birthdays, like going away parties, and people just coming in who weren't really there because of what we were serving. They were more there because of the way that they felt in the room. Like they wanted to go to a place that felt special, but they still just wanted to drink vodka sodas, which, like my kind of like take on the vodka soda is, if you order one from me, I'm going to make you the best one that I can make you. And that drink is important to me. Those ingredients that go into the drink are important. The drink itself is important because you're important, and I want you to have a good time. And I don't want you to be like, oh yeah, the craft cocktail nerd rolled his eyes when I ordered a vodka soda. Like, you're paying my rent and the rent of the bar. You know what I mean? And even more so, you're a guest in basically my home right now. And like, if someone came over to my house and I had soda and vodka and they asked for it, they're getting it. You know what I mean? I'm happily giving it to them. Then I moved on and spent some time as a spirits ambassador, which was a really, really, really cool opportunity for me. I started out with Beefeater and Plymouth Gin in the Pernod Ricard portfolio, and got to do a lot of trainings on the production of gin and spirits, and kind of like why these gins are as legendary as they are, why they're household names, why they're special. And kind of how they fit into the larger like gin diaspora. Teaching and training is like really a thing that makes me come alive and always has. I come from a line of teachers, and I just really enjoy kind of like the approachability of taking a subject that might seem complicated or weird or like textured or in depth, and showing people that it's really not that scary once you get in there and start talking about it. So here's some walks down memory lane for me here, seeing a few different trainings with different bar staffs, and there's 100 things that I could say that was great about this job. I mean, getting to travel and experience these distilleries was so cool. Like Tequila Ocho in the bottom corner there, that's a product that's a single vintage, single estate tequila that's released every year. Every year is a completely different product, just made in the same way. And like, there's so much just like textured romance to a spirit like that, and getting to share that with people, people who had down the road become very dear friends of mine, some of whom I'd hire. 2 of these 3 trainings have people in them who later would become employees of mine. Which is really special and just shows you like what a community there is. But the reason that I put this up there is because like education, and even more than education, curiosity has been like a major, major, major part of my career. When I moved to New York, I like couldn't get a bar job in my hometown to save my life. And then I moved to New York and got hired at cocktail bars, and I was just eating up books, like every book that I could get my hands on, and every day off and every extra dollar that I had, in that city was spent at someone's bar with a book in hand, just trying to like absorb as much as possible. And I never lost that. I never will lose it. It's very important to me. And I think there's a certain like humility and just a certain like excitement that comes from understanding that the more you know, the more you realize that you don't know. And so getting to work with these products and visit these distilleries was really special. Then Anu and I went on to open No Anchor and Navy Strength together. Anu is my partner in these bars, and she owns Rob Roy and is 10 times the legend that I am in the bar world for many reasons. But just certainly a person. She's a person who helps put Seattle on the cocktail map, and to this day is considered a major like luminary in the cocktail world, rightly so. This year she was up for Best American Bar Mentor at the big awards, the Spirited Awards in the cocktail world. So just a person that's like really kindly viewed and has been really influential. We opened No Anchor first and ended up getting a Best New Restaurant nomination through the James Beard Foundation, which was super cool for us and put us on the map and paid our rent, which was pretty dope. And then we ended up winning Seattle Weekly's Restaurant of the Year that year as well, which was like just so massive for us. And at the time that the year that No Anchor opened in late 2016, like something like 400 new bars and restaurants opened in Seattle that year. So to not only like be a place that was memorable amongst those, but for someone, with authority to say, hey, you're like the best out of these things that opened this year, that was just huge, huge, huge for us. And then the James Beard nom was like nationally people saying like, hey, this is a place that's going to be an influential restaurant for years to come. That's the verbiage on the James Beard website. If you look up Best New Restaurant, which Seattle has had a restaurant win before, Eduardo Jordan's, he won it 2 years ago, I think, for June Baby, and could have won it for Solari, to be honest with you. But just a really important, mention there. Navy Strength, we opened 6 months after No Anchor. So like, if you want to see the level of like masochists that Anu and I are, we opened 2 completely different concept places 6 months apart from each other on a pretty like shoestring budget. But we ended up winning, some awards all our own there, including, I think first we were Eater's People's Choice for best bar that opened that year. And then we went on to compete in the Bar Fight Club, which is a competition that's been running for about a decade. 100 bars apply, 6 bars get in, and you have to bring your entire team and recreate your bar in the same space as the other 5 bars. And then it's the after party for the James Beard Awards, but people vote on their favorite things. So the judges vote, and we actually finished near the top in the judges voting, and then the people vote as well. And we won the people's vote, which is always more important to me than the judges, because the people are the ones that pay your rent. And then we went on a few months later to win the Spirited Award for Best New American Cocktail Bar, which completely changed our life. And one of these days I'll send out, I have the video of us at the awards in New Orleans. And we're sitting at the table. I mean, they're just surrounded by legends, people who, I'm just looking around the room at people whose like books I read coming up, and I'm like pinching myself, can't believe I'm here. And we had like tempered our expectations and basically said, we know that we're not going to win this. We were up against Attaboy, their second location that they opened in Nashville, which like Milk and Honey is like the bar that I mentioned is like the OG cocktail bar kind of. And the Aviary had opened their location in New York. And so we were up against the Aviary, which is like Grant Achatz, like the Alinea group, huge resources, really talented people. And then the Broken Shaker, I think it was their Chicago location, but hugely admired peers of ours. And when they called our name, you just hear this gasp from our table, and we just realized that our life had changed, and it did. It tripled our business overnight. We came back to like, we were on the news. We had to hire all these people. It instantly kind of like made our fortunes at Navy Strength. And once again, I mean, who knows how many bars opened in the U.S. that year? But out of all the, probably conservatively, 500, 1,000, I don't know, cocktail bars open that year. And for Navy Strength to be awarded that honor was just like really incredible for us. And interestingly, if you read the verbiage of that award, it's almost verbatim the same thing as the James Beard Best New Restaurant thing. It's for a cocktail bar that is already making an impact and is likely to make an impact in the cocktail world for years to come. And we believe that is something that we're capable of doing, even though we kind of have a small team, limited resources, and are in this little corner of Belltown in the corner of the country. Anyways, pretty special stuff. And No Anchor, you can see, got a James Beard nom for our bar program too. Never to be outdone by its kid brother, Navy Strength. No Anchor's bar program is one of the weirdest in the city. And, all the cocktails are bottled and pre-diluted or on draft. And they're just really unique kind of experiential, but quite simple cocktails. And so I'm really proud of that bar program. We have a new cocktail program that we're going to launch there in the next month or so that's based on the concept of synesthesia, which I'm really excited about. And I won't say too much more about that right now, but look out for it for sure. Through this kind of like bar success, we started doing pop-ups and traveling around to some of the best bars in the country, kind of like clockwise from the top left here. You have the Roosevelt Room in Austin, Texas, where we did a Rob Roy pop-up. Roosevelt Room is like just a legendary cocktail bar and have some of the best drinks I've ever had in my life. Next to them is Undertow, which is an incredible little tiki bar in Phoenix, which they are true like peers of ours. And if you want to know if you're on the same page as another cocktail maker, you will have no more questions about the matter when you show up and for a pop-up. And I said, hey, I don't know if I brought enough beeswax, and we like have a drink at Navy Strength that's fat washed with beeswax. And he was like, oh, it's okay. Like I have this really great local beeswax we use for our beeswax drink. And I was like, of course you have a beeswax drink too. It was so great. Same page. Below that, you'll see us teaching a seminar at Toronto Cocktail Conference a few years ago. We've done a few pop-ups in Toronto now. And that seminar we've taught a few times. It's called The Culture of Curiosity. And it's all about maintaining your level of curiosity as you kind of like advance in your career. But, once again, something that will like never leave my ethos or the ethos of this company by kind of by proxy. Next to that is our pop-up at Lost Lake, which the year that that Navy Strength won Best New American Cocktail Bar, Lost Lake in Chicago won Best American Cocktail Bar. They're a really incredible tropical bar in Chicago, and few of us flew out and took over their bar for 2 nights. It was their 4-year anniversary, and we wanted to give the staff the night off, so we did a ticketed event one night where we did kind of like the story of our Navy Strength through 5 cocktails. And yes, we did serve people 5 Navy Strength drinks, which, as you know, if you've been there, is kind of a tall order for some people. But people in Chicago can put away some booze. I actually didn't see as many people struggling to finish that last round. And then the next day we did a just kind of a open type thing, come one, come all, and it was sort of a who's who room of Chicago people that we love and respect and tropical drink enthusiasts. But to name a few bars that we've done these pop-ups at: Lost Lake, Death and Company, Grand Army in Brooklyn, the Roosevelt Room, the Spare Room in Hollywood, which this year won the award for Best American Hotel Bar, Rum Club in Portland, which those guys are OGs and like probably one of the best bars in America also. Pretty Ugly in Toronto. Last summer we did one at Lidkobe, which is a really, really lovely cocktail bar in Copenhagen. And the reason that I mentioned these places is because all of these people are kind of like moving the bar like higher and higher in the place where they live. And for us to go there and have the opportunity to do these things, it's not just about like exposure for us, because, really only a handful of people will ever probably immediately come to our bar and visit us because of it. But we learn so much. We exchange so many ideas. We never have a problem like staffing, or rarely have a problem staffing, because some of these people are seeing Navy Strength and saying like, hey, I've been thinking about moving to Seattle. And then they look us up and we're like, oh, cool. We worked that event with you. We know that you're awesome. You're hired, kind of thing. And just that exchange of ideas, like we're going there and seeing what they're doing. And then we're getting to export a Seattle thing, which is really important to us because we need to be exporting Seattle products. We need to be exporting Seattle talent. We want our bartenders to ultimately move somewhere else and go and experience something else if that's something that they would like. Just like a really cool opportunity. The other reason is because we're able to kind of offer this as a thing that our bartenders and servers can go and experience, and occasionally our kitchen staff. When we go and do these pop-ups, it's like, you know, most of our bar staff has never gone and done something like that before. So to have that opportunity to travel through working in a bar, like something that most of our parents and relatives and friends told us was like, you know, just something to get us by. And they didn't understand that it was like our true calling or true passion in life. It's really special to be able to offer that. And additionally, it's nice to be able to go and visit kind of like breweries and distilleries that are local to these locales. When I went and did that pop-up in Copenhagen, you better believe I rented a bicycle and rode my bike out to Empirical Spirits to see what they were doing out there. It's just like, it's part of the education. It's part about the curiosity. Cool. Let's talk about draft cocktails. So the program at here today is going to be, it's going to be draft cocktail focused, but it has a twist. So a lot of you have probably, Dave, do we want to take a break or anything? Or are we good?
Oh no, I was just jumping on because my internet works now.
Hey, your internet works. Everybody, big round of applause for Dave and his internet.
Plus, I figure we might have some questions coming once we start digging into this. So
yeah. Anyone who has questions, just throw them up there in the Q&A. And Dave, feel free to interrupt me.
I'm certified by Ayuba as HD Crispy. So
okay. Hi, Ayuba.
Oh, I dressed for the occasion too. So let's talk some cocktails.
Let's talk cocktails. So draft cocktails are exactly what they sound like. You are dispensing the usually the entire cocktail from a draft system, which means it's in an enclosed, pressurized vessel. It's traveling through some liquid line, some beer line. It's being forced through that with gas. So you typically CO2. You can do it with nitrogen too, if you would like. If you've ever had a, like a nitro cold brew before at a coffee shop, like that's kind of what we're talking about. You can use them for texture. In the bottom left, you can see a draft cocktail being poured on a gun. That's not just soda coming out of there. That is an entire highball. In the top left, you can see the Suntory Toki highball machine, which are very popular in Japan, and you're starting to see them in the US. In fact, we have one at Rob Roy. If you ever get a chance to try the Toki highball there, it's definitely, look at Dave's face, he knows. Anyone who's gone to Rob Roy as their last stop just for one and then ordered the highball and ended up having like 4 knows what I'm talking about. It's like the most delicious thing in the world. So let's talk about the why of draft cocktails. They're fast is the number one reason to do it. It's just really, really, really easy. I mean, I've seen people roll up in like a food cart type scenario to music and kind of like culture festivals and crank out 3,000 cocktails sold in a day at, $18 each. Like it's wild how fast you can get these things out. They are typically inexpensive, but from what I've gleaned from being involved in this like movement kind of as long as it's been a thing since my Gin Palace days, which would have been 2010 or 2011, is most people that really know what they're doing don't skimp on their ingredients. It's not really your cost saving on what you're putting in the drink. It's more that you're saving the labor of having an additional person there to make drinks for people. So on the right here, you see the bar polite provisions. which is a really, really lovely bar in San Diego, owned by and started by our dear friend Eric Castro. And their drinks are amazing. This place has won every award in the book, and they have a really kind of like robust menu of draft cocktails, including stirred drinks, meaning drinks that are not carbonated and have no juice. So think your old fashions, your Negronis, your Manhattans, and then you can see they're pouring there something that's a little bit more kind of like light and refreshing and bubbly. But these people are like, they're ingredients driven people like we are. They are, there is an opportunity, however, to like use some economy of scale, right? Instead of making, one bottle of syrup for the week because syrups go bad, you can make enough to do several kegs of the drink, and then they're chilled and they're under pressure and nothing, there's no bacterial activity going on. So like there's kind of an economy of scale with it too, which is great. They're textured, right? You can dispense them with CO2 and get this really cool, bubbly, totally incorporated thing. I like to use the example of the gin and tonic. When I make you a gin and tonic, I'm doing a couple ounces of gin, and then I'm doing, probably like 3 to 4 ounces of tonic, which means that the drink is half carbonated. If you put a GMT on tap and force carbonate that, you're getting a fully carbonated thing. The texture is something that, we've realized that there are tricks to over the years. Dave Arnold, who was the head of food science at the French Culinary Institute, he has an amazing podcast called Cooking Issues. If you've never listened to it, it is just a riot. This guy's brain moves faster than anyone in the industry, and he's just a true freak. He actually got into the food science side of things because he was an artist who built robots that he would do battle with, and then one of them set him on fire, and his wife was like, you have to get a different focus. And so he started focusing on food and drink. But he opened Booker and Dax in New York with David Chang in 2012 or late 2011. And then he opened Existing Conditions in New York as well with Don Lee a few years ago, which this year won Best American Bar Team, which Navy's Strength was up for.
Salty.
Anyways, the one that got away. But yeah, they're textured like his techniques, things like you want as little particulate matter in solution as possible because you want to be able to force as much CO2 in there, and kind of anything that's in solution is an enemy of carbonation. You want to carbonate and purge your kegs a few times, meaning force the CO2 in and then let it out, because it kind of primes the lid to receive more and more and more carbonation. And smarter people than I am figured this stuff out. I just read their books and took to heart what they have said, and I remain, curious about it. You can also dispense things with nitrogen, which not too many people are doing, but there is a Seattle bartender who's done some really cool things with dispensing nitro martinis, and he even did a nitro mojito that was really cool, and just playing with the creamy texture of some drinks. So the sky's kind of the limit. In a large kind of like non-craft setting, I would call out the draft cocktail program at the Alamo Draft House, particularly the one in San Francisco, which has had some like really next level bartenders in there. And I think they pay the rent of their theater by selling these gimlets on tap. They just crush them. People just go through, round after round of them. And they're fast, and they're really great, and they sell them fast enough that they're always fresh too. The other place on here, the other photo on here, the drink that kind of has the orange and the olive on it, that's Dante in New York City. You can't see the logo on that guy's shirt, but Dante has won Best Bar in the World at Tales of the Cocktail. I mean, this place is legendary, and what I say to people if they're, I don't know, hating on draft cocktails, is if it's good enough for these people who I consider to be luminaries in the bar world, it's good enough for me, and it's just a problem to be figured out. The bottom left bar with the gun, by the way, is called Slipper Clutch. It's in Los Angeles, and was opened by some very dear friends of ours, and they created their own bag and box system. So picture the soda systems from that would like, you'd hook up a soda syrup and then it's getting mixed with carbonated water. They said, why can't we do that in a proprietary way? And we'll put the booze and the syrup and then just mix it with the carbonated water on the way out. And yeah, okay, technically it only saves you a bartender from doing this, which is pouring like some cranberry cocktail and some vodka or whatever. But then they have all this control where they can make this crazy, like they make a house root beer there that's just insane. So you have like a lot of ability to create this really memorable experience. And you can see the next word there is foolproof. Anyone that steps behind your bar can serve it. It's that easy. You know what I mean? Like get the amount that goes, the right amount that goes in the glass and the right garnish. But it's like they're so fast, they're so inexpensive and cost saving, they're so textured, but they are just like really, really hard to mess up. Which with all the things that you have to worry about in a small business today means something. And it's more bandwidth that your bartenders, if you hire people who are really affable, congenial bartenders, you don't want those people's head, like their time is not best spent with their head down, looking for like all these bottles in the well. Their time is best spent looking up, smiling, connecting with people, asking people how things are, because those are the things we've learned that bring people back to your bar, right? It's also incredibly consistent. You can make, 5 of these kind of like homebrew sized kegs of these cocktails, and you know that all of them are going to be the exact same drink. And you know that when you dispense the 500 cocktails that you just batched out in these kegs, you know that they're going to be exactly the same every single damn time. And that means a lot too, because we've all been to bars before where you're like, oh, that guy's working. I'll have a Guinness and a Jameson. You know what I mean? Like, whereas maybe there's another bartender that works there and you're like, hey, he made me a really good Rob Roy, or he made me a really good sidecar last time I was here. I'll order one of those from him. And then the final thing is it's sustainable, which sustainability is like such a like hot button topic in every industry. And realistically, like I know that the world is not going to be saved because we reused some limes, right? Or the world is not going to be saved because we cross-utilized an ingredient and Mario brewed with something and then we kind of used like the spent version of the ingredient in some way and made a syrup out of it and reused that. That stuff isn't going to, like throwing some pandan leaves in the trash or in the compost isn't going to like ruin the world. No more than saving them and reusing them will save it. But having the ethos in your place where every staff member comes to work and is like, hey, not only does like the bar manager care about kind of like all these ingredients, but like every single level here, the cooks, the chef, the brewer, ownership, management, bartenders, everyone is constantly looking around saying like, how can we just freaking do better and be better at this, waste less. And when you get that kind of energy going in a place, it's really cool. And you can almost stop doing the work yourself and let your staff kind of like be the ones that are innovating and kind of like bringing things to your attention, which is awesome.
Chris, before we move on, I've got a few questions here. Some coming in rapid fire at the moment. A couple kind of more technical questions and thoughts first, and then I'll jump to the ones in the Q&A here. Yuba asks, are there cocktails that aren't great as draft or won't work, or does it really just come to the equipment? And I'm also assuming the ingredients might play a role in that as well. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you've kind of thought of before and tried that hasn't worked, or that you've seen and it just hasn't been completely executed perfectly, and it might be more because of process or resources versus like the ability to make something delicious?
That's a great question, Ayuba, and the answer is, and I'll give you some specific examples too. The answer is yes, there are some cocktails. Nothing is impossible. I mean, there's a way to figure out pretty much everything, but we're talking about using the same equipment to dispense different types of drinks. Like if you go into, or look at the photo of Polite Provisions, there's 2 different types of tap handles there, right? So like that's telling us that there's some sort of like need for a difference of equipment there. Um, so were you talking about using homebrew kegs? Cornelius kegs is what they were, um, is like the brand of them typically, although you can find them made by many other companies, but they were kind of colloquially nicknamed corny kegs. So if you hear me say corny keg, that's what I'm talking about. And it's as opposed to a traditional keg where you're kind of tapping it with a coupler and the beer is all coming out the middle of the keg. And kind of in this one manifold, there's CO2 or nitrogen or a blend going in, and then liquids getting pushed out the top. A corny keg has a air in and a liquid out. And all of these kegs kind of like have that same thing. And it's not, like the tool isn't perfect for every single type of thing. So the things that I've found that are like the hardest would be things that actually have really low viscosity. Like there's a reason that the Toki highball machine, you can't just take water and Toki Japanese whiskey and put it in a corny keg and pressurize it and get a, a system like that. It uses a kind of a super chilling and a super carbonating system that's a lot more advanced than the simple one in a corny keg. It kind of relies on super chilling, and then also it has kind of multiple injection points of CO2 along the way. And so that thing will develop, we tried to make as a joke for a party one time, we tried to do some vodka sodas and it just wouldn't carbonate in a normal corny keg because there's not, for the level of carbonation that we're looking for, especially now when people have access to things like Topo Chico, it's pretty hard to recreate that. It's almost like the CO2 doesn't have as much to grab onto, but more than that, it's a problem of, your CO2 regulator for beverage is only rated up to like as high as you would want it for beverage usually. So like in the like, okay, maybe like 100, but realistically you don't bring them like champagne is at like 62 pounds per square inch. And like a traditional kind of like carbonated cocktail that you might get at a bar for kind of example would be like in the 40s, like 40 to 50. And then like draft beer is like 12 to 15 pounds per square inch. So, a Toki highball, if I forget what the PSI is at, but it's like really, really, really cranked up there. And that would be a challenge to do. Cool.
Another thing I can take, we have from anonymous attendee.
Yeah.
Don't know who you are, but thanks for being here.
Is it the Masked Singer?
Yeah, maybe. First question was, would you bottle and sell to-go cocktails like Crowling beer? And yes, we will, if we're able. Yeah, so that currently in Seattle, that's allowed through 30 days past phase 4, whenever we reach that point. Right now, we're currently in King County in phase 2. We have hope that they'll see the benefits of this thing for restaurants and bars and their revenues and keep it around forever. Maybe with a little more regulation and stuff. But yeah, for now, if that's still available to us when we open, we will do that. Another one that I can answer, will beer-based cocktails be on the menu? Yes, in some limited forms, but obviously we're trying to reach an audience beyond just beer drinkers. There might be, gluten concerns, other allergy concerns, or they're just not, they're not looking for that thing when they walk through our doors. So yeah, kind of, we will make some beer cocktails, some things involving like the drink I'm having, utilizing beer as kind of a base along with some other spirit and bitters and what have you. We already do that at No Anchor as well with our Radler mix that is a mix of grapefruit and oleo and Campari into whatever kind of piney West Coast IPA we have going at the moment.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of beer cocktails. Like Dave said, it's, the cocktails that we're serving are largely geared, first and foremost, how about that? Geared towards people who maybe can't or don't drink beer. But we know, I've said this many times, but the drinker, the millennial drinker isn't just interested in beer. And like, I am 100% this way, where I will go to a place that has a really great beer program, and then I'll be like, ooh, they've got some pet nat on the menu, and then I'll switch to drinking some bubbles, and then I'll be like, what's up with this like aperitif style like Americano cocktail you have, and then I'll switch to that. So
And another thing here. One last question. The two questions I have remaining. One will be answered on the next slide for you, but the other will be is how large of a role will the cocktail menu play? Will it be a bigger focus than the brewery? And absolutely not. This our goal and mission first and foremost is to make incredible beer.
yeah,
And that will be a principal revenue driver in the brewery, obviously. These will have good margins. These draft cocktails, they'll be low labor, in that we can knock out a keg of one of these things in an hour versus making 100 cocktails over the course of several days and time.
mhm.
So yeah, these will be like profitable in a way that will help our brewery and thus help our financial situation, and also our investors' financial situation as money comes out. So yeah, this is simply something that we view as like a unique segment of our business compared to other breweries who either legally can't have this thing or don't have the ability or want to have kind of a full bar setup. So
Yep. Yeah, the same with having a kitchen. It's one of those things where a lot of people are like, I just don't want to deal with the hassle. But as I already said, we're masochists.
but we'll be executing at a high level. Yeah, why don't we go to that next slide, and that should start to answer this last question about whether or not these drinks are non-alcoholic.
Cool. So if anyone recognizes these, just legendary Pulitzer-winning books here. This is the Choose Your Own Adventure series of books, which if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, you might remember. You might have bought some of these at your Scholastic book fair or read one of them through the Book It program to get a free personal pan pizza at Pizza Hut. But these books were basically created by a guy who he would tell his kids, kind of like bedtime stories. And eventually he kind of run out of ideas, and he started giving them options and realized that it was like compelling to the kids. And so he started producing this series of books where you get to a certain point and you get to make a decision, and then your decisions kind of like echo towards the end of the book. Some of them had as many as I think 35 or 40 different endings. Some of them had as little as 8, I think, endings. According to a Wikipedia entry I read last night on the Choose Your Own Adventure book series. But anyways, the idea is that it gave you the control, and when you give people control, it can be really compelling. And so interestingly here, it's important to note that we're giving them the control to say which of these things that they want, but it's not like, in certain, it's not like a food add-on or something where it's like, if you've seen on a menu before, I mean, we've done it at No Anchor before, where it's like, hey, if you want to add caviar to this amazing seafood dish, like it's X amount extra. And most people are like, no, I don't want that. I just want the dish. Normally, this is more like you are choosing something, and here's the large like breadth of choices. The drinks will all be, or largely be, non-alcoholic. The reason that we wanted to do that was because we want for people who aren't drinking to be able to have a really incredible non-alcoholic thing that isn't just like a non-alcoholic beer or something. And that's an increasingly growing sector of the population. And through talking with some really legendary bartenders who are either sober or just don't drink, and there is a distinction between those things, but some really legendary people have kind of like opened my eyes to the fact that this is a growing segment of the market, but two, it's overlooked by even most people that, purport to do it. I mean, I'm guilty of this at No Anchor. Usually we have like a non-alcoholic thing there. It's just a lot of labor and a lot of that's a really busy beverage program and a really challenging one for our team to kind of like maintain, and we just don't have the bandwidth yet to create a more kind of like compelling and deep non-alcoholic cocktail program. Whereas here they will just be something that our bartenders are producing every day, and there will be no stigma attached to someone coming up to the bar and ordering one and we say, choose your spirit, or you can have it without alcohol. So the drinks will be appropriately priced for a craft cocktail, but if you get it without booze, it takes away, $5 on the cost or something like that. So it'll still be, the price of a cheap craft cocktail to buy one, but not anything that's prohibitive. Going on to the next. And that thing is true. These are 5 cocktails idea I came up with on a random Tuesday, which was last Tuesday, where, they're going to be rotating. And we still haven't really decided on what our naming situation is going to be necessarily, but essentially they're going to have names. They'll have about like 5 elements that are kind of like laid out as like flavor components. I'm a huge fan of not saying things like syrup, or not saying things like simple, not saying things like house made. I don't necessarily love saying fresh on the menu, because I am of the opinion that if you come to one of our places, you better assume that all this stuff's going to be fresh. We go to great lengths to do that. And the way that I look at it now is like the words like fresh and simple and syrup on a menu, or house made on a menu, are really trying to call your attention to like the one thing that is fresh, or the one thing that is house made, when for us it's like everything is fresh and everything's house made. I also don't want to like confuse people or make them feel dumb, and I feel like that is all too rampant in cocktail bars, where it's kind of this arms race of listing esoteric ingredients. And I don't mind. Yeah, I think that the modern drinker is very educated. We have people that walk into our bar. It used to be that we'd have to explain to people like what Chinar artichoke amaro is. And then now we get people walking in who aren't like, not only they're not like, do you have Chinar? They're like, hey, what do you guys make with Chinar? Like, it's assumed that we have this esoteric thing. It's assumed that we know about it, that everybody knows about it. So for that reason, I do try and like give the drinker credit and assume that they know. But in general, I prefer to break things down to kind of like their base flavors, because I think that I want to gear things towards the average person and make them feel comfortable, because the person who knows what the heck is going on is already at our place because they know that we know. And they know that we know that they know. So in this case, like, for example, number 4, pistachio is an ingredient. Like, I would make pistachio milk out of that, like blitz it up and create a nut milk out of it and use it as kind of like a flavor accent for that drink. This drink, I'm basically picturing kind of, like a cardamom coffee, sort of like, something that you'd be served as like a street drink. And lemon and maple and kokum, which is a fruit from India, like those things would just be kind of like accents on the flavor there. But I don't need to say that one thing is a syrup, or that we made bitters out of the green cardamom, or whatever it is that we would choose to do. I just want people to know that the base flavors. So then you would choose what your drink is, and then you get to choose your spirits. One of the added benefits for me of this is that drinkers and also bartenders that work for us, and we won't really particularly have like servers as we know the traditional position to be, but people who are service staff will have their favorites, right? So someone comes up and they're like, man, this coconut water cantaloupe like orange peel thing, that sounds like a crazy ass like orange Julius kind of concoction, and you're like, oh man, you have to try it with mezcal. It's so incredible with smokiness and like that agave kind of like verdant flavor. You got to get that. And then you might hear another person being like, actually, last time I got it with cognac and like that silky kind of like vanilla thing really took that orange Julius thing to the next level, my dude. So I think it like creates a compelling, the choose your own adventure thing is compelling. And by compelling, I mean that people can take it and talk about it, you know, even after they've gone there. But at the end of the day, these are approachable kind of like flavor profiles that the average person can understand.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool way to kind of provide different uh, a different way to explore. Like that's one of the things that excites me about going into a new brewery, new to me brewery, is kind of the opportunity to explore their approach to, you know, particular styles or flavor combinations, and yeah, this will not only help us with our menu and giving people this way to like either, you know, want to take a break, need a little caffeine hit, like I'm gonna get that cold brew thing without alcohol in it, um, or you know, throw some, you know, aged rum in there and go nuts, uh, and then that, yeah, kind of pays dividends to our brewing staff, to Mario. Some of these ingredients might either be used by him first or by us first, and then we're able to incorporate them into brewing process down the line too. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that's a real fun thing to do.
Yeah. Does anyone have any like cocktail questions in general? Any literally ask me anything. I might touch on a few just like last points here, but throw some things in there and I'm happy to answer them. Back on the sustainability point, um, the level of like water waste that goes into the traditional bar program is one thing that we've like done a really great job at Navy Strength and No Anchor with. You're never going to omit it completely, but we've done a really great job of minimizing it, and draft cocktails are really good for that. Our friends Chad and Claire, who run Tin Roof, which is like a kind of the preeminent bar sustainability consulting group in the country. Um, when we asked them when we were opening No Anchor and Navy Strength, kind of like what are the main like sustainability concerns that you guys think we should focus on, and they were very much in the camp of focus on your water, because it's tied to everything else, and that makes sense for us because we're on the water, right? The Puget Sound is right there, across the street from us, and so water should be first and foremost for us. But when you make a margarita in a traditional restaurant, it takes as little as 1 liter or as much as 3 liters of water to make one. It's all kind of like included in the making of the drink, from dividing up the packaging, growing things, shaking it, but even the idea of like we make these really kind of inefficient ice cubes in a lot of bars, and then we shake up a margarita, and then we strain the margarita off the ice onto new ice. And it's like there wasn't anything wrong with the first ice, you know what I mean? But like kind of analyzing why we do what we do and how we can do it better, I think is like, pretty important.
Couple questions, and then we do need to start wrapping it up here. Ayuba asks, cocktail pop-ups for here today. For example, will Miracle come there or new pop-up ideas? I don't think we'll be taking Miracle away from Rob Roy. They crush it. They kill it. And also, we don't have the capability with this type of program to do that exactly. But I think that does lend to a kind of cool idea that we'll be uniquely equipped to do. is that not only will we be a place where our fellow brewers can come and brew a collab beer and have an event, and we can have some guest beers on for that
Oh,
event. We will also be a place where, you know, some of our favorite cocktail people can do like the teams at uh, Navy Strength and Rob Roy have done, and go and bring some people in to have like their special draft cocktails on for an event.
mhm.
Kind of furthering our collaborative ideas here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be compelling, Dave, to if we were doing a collaboration, let's say with a brewery from Austin, to say like, hey, you guys are coming out here making this beer. Why don't we also bring out this bar that you guys might have been to a bunch of times, but you're not like homies with them? We'll bring them here. They'll make some drinks, and then we'll all like get dinner together. And like now they've tightened their community because they came here and hung out with us. I think it's like, you know, win-win kind of thing. But to answer the real pop-up question, Ayuba, the like the pop-ups that we do are born out of necessity, not like because we're bored. You know what I mean? Like the reason we started doing the Nightmare Halloween pop-up at Navy Strength is because the first October that we were open was our slowest month of the year by far. And so we got to the end of the year and said, what can we do better next year? And our answer was October sucked. We got to figure that out. And so we created this Halloween pop-up, and October is our best month at Navy Strength now. So it's like, it's all about kind of like retooling and trying to, I don't know, make yourself ready. What else we got? What type of music will we play at the bar? That's a great question. I'm a huge fan of music that if you listen to it, it's interesting, it's compelling, but if you don't want to listen to it, you don't have to necessarily. Music is very, very, very important to us. It's very important to me. Dave was a music major. I used to live in an independent record store. Literally, my early 20s was the movie High Fidelity, essentially. And, you know, it's just incredibly, incredibly important to us. So, I mean, the three things that people are going to experience is our service, our vibe, and our product. And most of what we're going to focus on is our product. And then secondarily, our service and making sure that people feel good. If we don't have that third one down, and if people don't feel, if we created a waterfront brew pub and people don't feel good stepping into that space, we're like the all-time failures of the food and beverage world. You know what I mean? Like it's really just takes a little bit of curation and thought. But Dave, do you have a more specific example?
Well, I just see us having some kind of thematic things involved with that as well throughout the week or throughout the month. Yeah, I'm a big fan of like curating that vibe, whatever it is, each night. And I think if you do it, there's ample opportunity to kind of have the regular everyday, just like good grooving tunes on, but also, you know, we can do some different things related to kind of our ethos or our backgrounds individually, and kind of go from there. So basically, I'm saying there might be some like old school Texas country on every now and then, but those would be Texas Dave nights. Yeah, I think that's it for questions. I missed one.
I answered Ayuba's in type. He was asking if we could distill.
Yeah.
I said we can't, but if we do have fermentation mistakes, obviously we have a close connection with a lot of distilleries, including a very close, friendship with Copperworks and Big Gin and people like that. And, you know, certainly a fermentation mistake can be a happy one if you're able to distill it and make something unique out of it. So I don't foresee us having too many of those, but they can be fun accidents for sure.
Well, I think that pretty much brings us to the end of our time here. Just want to let you guys know a couple things coming up. Next week, we'll have 2 webinars for the price of one. One will be on Monday at 4 p.m. as well. And we'll be talking about hospitality that night a little bit, kind of our approach to that, how it's going to drive our business, how it's going to help us create a, kind of distinct culture around, not only amongst our staff, but with our customers. And then also later on in the week on Thursday, we're going to bring together a few of our favorite people from around the Belltown neighborhood, including Anu, who's been in the chat here, owner of Rob Roy and partner on Navy Strength Bennies and No Anchor, as well as Anna Douglas, who's we will be neighbors with in our space. Just opened up her yoga studio, Take Care Yoga, and Chris Jones from Screwdriver Bar, one of our favorite bars and music venues in the Belltown area. We're just going to kind of talk a little bit about the neighborhood we live in, the neighborhood we will, be brewing beer in and for, and kind of go from there, and a little bit of small business talk too, because we're all kind of in this together, especially in the Belltown neighborhood. There's a lot of love between everybody who's striving to create a really great experience for people coming to that part of town. And also, if you haven't yet, vote. Please vote. Next Monday, we'll get a little. We can get our drink on during that hospitality talk to get us ready for the next day, which I'm hoping will be a celebratory one. Anyways, thanks guys so much. We will see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.